Today we're going to do some maintenance on a 1025R John Deere subcompact utility tractor. There's a number of fluids that they recommend that you change every 200 hours or annually. And so today I'm going to show you how I do that maintenance. Now you can obviously get the parts that you need from a dealer, but I often use Green Parts Store and use the coupon code from Tractor Time with Tim, which is TTWT, to get free shipping. And they have their own kit that you can purchase that gives you everything that you need to do a 200-hour or an annual service on your 1025R. Mine, I think, is a 2019 model, so my air filter is not on top of the engine. It's mounted on the frame, or I don't know, but it's not on the engine. And so if you have the older model, then they have, I think it's called a Mate 1, that gives you a different air filter. But anyway, you get 4 quarts of hydraulic fluid, which is enough to do the transmission, which requires 3 gallons and 1 quart, and then the remaining 3 quarts go into the front axle. You get the inner and outer air filter elements, the hydraulic fluid filter, 3 quarts of engine oil, engine filter, the inline fuel filter element that goes underneath the left floorboard, the cartridge that goes in the clear glass container on the side of the engine, and then the O-ring for that clear glass container. Now your maintenance manual or owner's manual will tell you that you have to take the left rear tire off the tractor in order to take out the wire screen and magnet and clean that, but I've never done that. One thing I do is I drive up on these 6-inch blocks to give me more room to crawl underneath to get the hydraulic filter off, and also to give me more room on the back of the tractor. I can just sit down on my butt and reach everything that I need to. And the tools that you will need is a 6 millimeter, this is called, I think it says H6, but it's a metric 6 millimeter Allen wrench, and I've got one that I use a 3/8 inch ratchet with. You'll need a 13 millimeter socket to remove the drain plug for the transmission and to remove this bolt right here. So let's get started. So draining the transmission is pretty simple. This is the drain plug right here, 13 millimeter. And the fluid comes out pretty slow unless you open the fill cap on top, and that makes a big difference. Another thing you should make sure of is that your container, oil drain pan, can hold 3 gallons and 1 quart. I've never used this particular pan before, but it was not going to hold over 3 gallons of oil, so I had to put the plug back in, stop the drain, and go empty my oil pan and come back and try one more time. So while that finishes, this is the hose that we have to disconnect in order to get to the screen, which is inside behind this guy here. And so to do that, we're going to take our 6 millimeter hex socket, and it goes in this bolt right there. But before I remove that, I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to clean this pipe a little bit and blow it with compressed air, because I'm just going to slide this boot up on the pipe. Way to go, Bob. I get both of the compression, whatever they're called, spring clamps. I remove both of them from the rubber hose and just try to slide them up out of the way. And then usually I just take like a flat screwdriver underneath the edge and just start working one side or the other till you get up high enough. Pop off the end of the screen, and that's it. That's the hardest part of this whole thing. So then I left the bolt in just because I was yanking around on the hose. So take the bolt out, and then this guy just slides right out the side, and that is it. So this is the screen. It goes in like that. When you put it back together, the open end, this is open end, that's closed. Just slides together like that, and there you go. So now you have this apart. There is a magnet inside. That you'll want to remove and clean all the material off the screen. This one's not too bad. A little bit of metal, but not bad at all. And when you put this back together, I like to take a paper towel and wipe the surfaces there. This elbow, I like to clean it really good with a paper towel or something, shop towel, to make sure it's clean. When you put this back together, make sure you put the magnet back inside. You don't want to forget that. And this just slides in, held by friction. Shove it all the way in. And then being careful not to get it dirty again, come underneath and go straight in. And you want to go straight in, not at an angle, because there's a pocket that filter goes into on the other side, and it'll just feel right if you get it right. And that's all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bolt back in, because I'm going to be twisting on this guy trying to get the hose back over the elbow. So let's go ahead and put the bolt in. And there is a torque value for this little guy, and we'll get it in a moment, and I'll tell you what that is, but it's in your manual. And now all we have to do is get this hose back over the elbow. Take a pair of channel locks, which I have pretty good luck with. Put over the large clamp, it goes down first. And I just have to get a couple of different grips on it. Get it down where I want it to go. And I was able to get the large clamp on the bottom. I got it halfway down, coming in from the top with the pliers, and then I came up underneath with the pliers and gripped it, and just twisted it back and forth while pushing down on the clamp with a flathead screwdriver, just back and forth, and worked it down pretty easily where it needed to go. If you've taken this bolt out here, don't forget to put it back. And the owner's manual says that the bolt that holds the elbow in should be at 21 foot-pounds. So let's go ahead and take care of that before we forget about it. That's it. All right, hard part is done. Now to do the transmission filter, I find it gives me more room to drop the PTO. I've got the deck, the mower deck, so I've got all this attachment here that you may not have for the mower deck. But if you do have this, I find that it helps to lower it, because there is a filter right there. By lowering the attachment, it gets the shaft down out of the way a little bit, so you can get in here and get this filter off. Fortunately, this filter is not hard to get off. I'm just using a typical oil filter wrench that you can get anywhere, nothing fancy. And I've already loosened it up, and there we go. And as always, anytime you change a filter, make sure that the gasket comes off with the filter and doesn't remain on the other part. And of course, when you put in a new filter, get some oil on your finger and run it around the gasket before you put the filter back on. And I'm sure there's a spec for how tight to screw on the filter. I think it's when it first makes contact, now another half spin or something. Anyway, I just get it as tight as I can by hand, and that's usually perfect. The hydraulic fluid fill is right here. We're taking this off. Got a nice funnel. I'm going to put in there. And the capacity of the transmission and hydraulic system is 3.25 gallons. So I'm going to pour in exactly that much. And here's the one I hate most of all. This is the inline fuel filter. And there's a clamp there and a clamp there. And the first time I did this, I got fuel all over myself. I didn't know what I was doing the first time. Since then, I've gotten these little guys. I got them on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description. And they are used to clamp off the hose on each end. So let me put those on. Okay, you can see that I've got the hose clamped off here. And then to give myself room, I just came over here and clamped the hose off there. So now I'm going to spring these two little clamps and take the filter off. Alright, here's the old one, and here's the new one. And note that these filters are kind of a universal fit. Take a razor knife and cut off the smaller diameter part right here. It'll make it much easier to get on and off. And also note the direction of the fuel. This is a one-way filter, and if you'll turn it, you'll see an arrow that tells you the direction of fuel flow. And so the arrow needs to go toward the engine. There's fuel coming from the tank above the tire and this side, and then out this and going on to the engine. So make sure you get that right. Okay, that wasn't too bad. Next, we're going to do this fuel filter here, and there's a valve you should turn that way to stop the fuel from flowing back down, I guess, from the engine. I like to have an oil pan underneath because I'm doing this in my driveway. And it's pretty simple. You just loosen this guy here, loosen that, and take this off and replace the element. Let me put down the camera so I can do that. I've got the new filter element on. It only goes on one way, so you can't screw it up. When you're putting this back together, make sure that the spring is still in the bottom along with that red ring, and remember to replace your O-ring. And then it's pretty obvious how it goes back together, so we won't cover that. I don't know if there's any kind of spec on how tight this is supposed to be. I just get it finger tight, and like everything, when I start it up, I check everything for leaks, but that seems to be good enough. Remember to open the valve up again, and that's done. So draining the oil is very straightforward. It's a 17mm socket, and the filter is here on the side. So there's a filter, and my loader is on. It's easy enough to do with the loader attached, and one of these guys makes it very easy to change the filter. Now we need to add oil back to the engine, and this engine's got a couple of different places that you can add oil, but the one here on top is fine. And also we're going to do the air filter, so in order to do that we need to take the panel off the engine. So you turn this guy, I think, counterclockwise and pull it out. Yeah, it just slides backwards and out. And this is a very good time to use some compressed air. Alright, I'm done with the engine oil. Now let's attack the air filter. One thing you should do is, I guess, open this guy here. You're supposed to do that from time to time to let any dust fall out, but there's nothing going on there. And the air filter has this lock, and note that the orientation of the lock is at 0 degrees facing the front. And note that somewhere on here, here's an arrow and lock symbol, so it's locked right now. So you pull that, and then just rotate backwards a little bit, and off it comes. And here's the outer element. It just, you pull it straight out, and the inner element, same way, comes straight out. So let's get some new parts. Okay, it's pretty easy to put this thing back together. Okay, that was pretty easy. And while you're up here, you should go ahead and pull the screen in front of the radiator and knock it out. Or if you have compressed air, and actually, while I'm here, it wouldn't hurt to blow stuff around. Just back out. I see some debris down at the bottom of the radiator. Let's try to get that out. Since we've changed fuel filters, now we need to prime the fuel system, and you do that by turning the key one click. Now you can hear the fuel pump, and look at the fuel filling filter. All right, so start. Check for leaks. I think we're good. Now we're going to do the front differential. And the manual says to drain each side. This is the left side underneath the tractor. Over there it's the right side. And I don't think I did this before, but there's a drain plug on this cross member here, right there. I don't think I drained that one before, but the manual, it pays to read the manual, says to drain all three, that one and both sides. So let's get to it. And FYI, the socket that you will need is a 14 millimeter. Now this drain here on the cross member, apparently I did not remove that plug before because it still had paint on the head. And I wasn't able to get a 14 millimeter socket on it, but a 9/16 worked just as fine. But now that I've got the paint off the head, it is a 14 millimeter. So all three of these are 14. And it's obvious, but the plugs have like a washer. I don't know if it's a crush washer, but there is a washer on the plug. So don't forget about that. Don't lose it. Okay, you refill through the where you check it here on top at the little dipstick, and the manual says it has a capacity of 3 quarts, so I'm going to pour in close to 3 quarts. And the manual also states that you should let it sit for an hour to give time to drain to both sides of the front axle, and absolutely check it again after you've run it for a little bit. Last time I changed the fluid, I didn't check it for quite a while and it was low. So don't do what I did the last time. Give it an hour to drain, run it for, I don't know, 10 minutes, a few minutes, and then come back and check again. 2 vent plugs, one on each side. And the manual states to open those plugs when you're filling with oil. But they look like a pain to remove, and I'm not even sure how to remove them. So I've opted not to deal with that and just give the oil plenty of time to drain and equalize to both sides. I'm still not finished with the front axle. I need to let the oil drain a little bit. It started bubbling out of the fill hole, and you do have to go slow, but let's give that a few minutes. And one thing that you can do while you're already greasy and dirty and tired is to grease the drive shafts underneath here. And there's 4 fittings if you don't have the mower deck, and 3 of them are very easy. I find it works well to be on a level surface with the transmission neutral without the brake set, and then I can rotate these shafts any way I want to, and the tractor just moves a little bit. I can rotate these shafts by hand, and even the this guy right here, flywheel, to get the grease fittings lined up so you can hit them. So yeah, you take this cuff off, there's a little thumb clamp here. You can take that off. That one's easy to get to. The one in the back's easy to get to. The one that everyone dreads is this guy right here, directly behind the engine. See this hole right here? You've got to get your grease gun up through that hole. And it is a royal pain for most of us. There's not very much room to maneuver. And I have a grease gun head made by Lock and Lube, and I really like it. And I'm going to try to make the hole a little bigger so that I can get this thing in a little bit deeper and reach the fitting. This is a standard length Lock and Lube, and it won't quite make it. Now they make a longer version, which I could get, but then there's some fittings on the back hoe that the longer version would be too long for. So this works for everything on the tractor except that. So I'm going to see if I can make that larger. So my brother-in-law a few years ago got me this drill bit set. So I'm going to take one of these guys and see if I can make that hole larger. I got it a little bigger, and it's barely enough that I can get my Lock and Lube on the thing, but it's easy to get the Lock and Lube on at an angle so that the grease doesn't really go in the fitting. It comes out around it, so you've got to be careful about that. I did finally get it locked on because I could hear the grease coming through the joint. It makes a different sound. You can hear it. I'm going to make this just a little bit larger. And the other thing that helps, the transmission's in neutral and the brakes are locked, but I could still turn this flywheel and turn the drive shaft to get the fitting lined up. Another thing that helps is to have a good flashlight and shine it from the side so you can see what you're doing when you're trying to line up your grease gun with the fitting. And if you do what I just did, turn the drive shaft so that the pointy end of the bit doesn't go into your drive shaft. I got tired of screwing around with the bit. I was afraid that I was going to go too deep and hit my drive shaft. So my dad gave me this many years ago. I don't know what it's called. It's a, I don't know, burr bit, grinding bit. It goes on an air, one of these guys for your air compressor. And made pretty quick work of reaming it out larger. I think you can see now that it's quite a bit larger, and I can easily get my Lock and Lube grease head up in there. So I'm happy with that. Why John Deere did not make that hole larger, I don't know. And that's it. Hopefully you found something interesting or helpful in the video, and thanks for watching. And remember, check that front axle after you've run the tractor for a little bit. Thank you. See you next time.